Christians are like, okay, we'll take that deal. But what we didn't realize is there's a new secular religion. They say they're not a religion.
How do priests, pastors fight against that?
It's just not enough to send them to Sunday school anymore.
Why do you think Christians and many Catholics are afraid of the religion of Islam?
If you speak against it, you are racist, you are fascist. They just hit you with it every single time.
You're seeing in your area, Plano, where they're building the Epic Center. Our system in our Constitution has left it open for them to be able to come and infiltrate if they want to.
If things stay the same, we lose.
The rise of Israel, Hamas, the controversy, where are you at?
Financially and militarily support Israel. That's a new doctrine that was popularized in the early 1900s by the Scofield Bible. So this whole theology comes from kind of a dark place.
Have you been following Rogan talking about he's going to church?
Yeah, I have. There is an end to degeneracy. You can only be so gay, so many genders, so,
You can only be so gay? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You can only be so gay.
Yeah, you can only...
Watch this. I can't even believe I'm showing this with Dr. It's not even in my notes.
Wow.
Have you ever heard this before?
I've never heard
I just heard this last week. I
Doesn't
never knew
surprise me.
about this.
Doesn't
Rob, had you
surprise
ever
me.
heard this before?
Nope.
The bigger and bigger life got, I realized there's no way in the world I can do anything big by myself. The number of miracles that's happened, I can't take credit for that.
30 seconds.
Did you ever think you would make it? I feel I'm so close I could taste sweet victory. I know this life meant for me.
Adam, what's your point? The future looks bright.
Bet David.
My handshake is better than anything I ever signed. It's right here.
You are a one-of-one?
My son's right about
I don't think I've
Look
ever
what I
said this
become.
before.
Dr. Taylor Marshall, how are you?
I'm great. Good to be here,
It's
Pat.
great to have you on.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of your work.
Thank you.
And our guys
Thank you.
here are big fans, the way you break things down. And I really like the way you communicate. I found out a few things about you. We are 7 months apart, 6.5 months. You're older than me, just so you're the senior here.
I got more
78.
gray than you.
March 29th, yeah. I'm October 18th. You got 8 kids.
Yes.
With you and your wife.
Yep.
Respect. You got a PhD in philosophy, right? I think from University of Dallas.
That's right.
And then you went from being a priest in the Episcopal Church to being a Catholic.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, I wasn't raised in any religion. I think we celebrated Christmas and Easter, obviously, but we never went to church. I wasn't baptized. Had no religious formation. And when I was a kid, my best friend told me, he's like, "Hey, I just want you to know you're going to hell." And I was like, "Why am I going to hell?" And he said, "Because you're not baptized. You're not a Christian." And as a kid, I didn't know what a baptism was. I didn't know any of this, but it kind of started making me think about, okay, well, who is God and heaven and hell and all that. And
How old are you at the time?
probably around like 8.
So is
9.
mom and dad, are they church going? Are they heavily? Not at
nothing.
all. Okay, it's a regular family.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
American family. I mean, if you'd asked us, what are you? We would have said Christian, but we never went to church in any tradition. So I was a huge Texas Ranger fan as a kid, and sometime when I was around 12 or 13, my dad got me all the autographs of the Texas Rangers. And one of them, it was Darryl Porter. He was the catcher for the Rangers. He wrote his signature, and under his name, he wrote Romans 10:9. And I thought, oh, he's trying to like send me a code or there's, So somehow I found out that was a Bible verse. I looked it up, and it says, if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you'll be saved. And I was like, oh, here's this easy way. Like Darryl Porter from the Texas Rangers just told me. So I think I said my first prayer probably at that moment, and then just began a journey of, reading through the Bible several times. And eventually I became a Protestant minister, a Episcopalian priest, and was doing a lot of pro-life work and reading, getting to know people and reading a lot of theology. And in my pro-life work, I kind of realized that when people would push back, I could use philosophy or some Bible verses, but I always noticed that the Catholics were always out in front of the Planned Parenthood praying, and I got to know some Catholics, and I was like, they got a catechism, they got a pope, they got encyclicals, they got all these like extra tools. And so as I prayed about it and discerned, eventually went to Rome, and I was at a mass with Pope Benedict. And early that day, I'd been able to go below the altar in St. Peter's, and that's where, according to tradition, St. Peter's buried. And just had this very deep conviction that this is where I need to be. It kind of fits, everything that I've longed for from a child, praying, trying to discover. And so my wife and I converted. We had 4 children at the time. We have 8 children now. She's a huge PBD fan. She's like a day one PBD.
Get at it.
I've been hearing for years. PBD said this, PBD said that. So I know she listens to your show all the time, listens to mine, so we got a good matchup. But yeah, we have 8 children, and we live in Texas. And
good for you guys.
Yeah.
8.
8
done,
kids.
or are you guys going to go 2 more, double digits?
I don't think we can have any more. Nature has tapped us out.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I tell my wife, I said, babe, 1 more for 5, babe. 1 more for 5. She's like, you're not doing it.
We got to get the birth rates up.
Yeah, no, listen, we're helping out. You're at 8, I'm at 4.
I know.
The guys at
We're doing
1
our
or
job.
2, we got to get more. The
Yeah.
guys that want to have the 4s and the 8s.
Yeah.
But okay, so that's interesting, the story, because typically you'll hear the other way around. You don't hear, Episcopal to Catholic. You'll hear sometimes Catholic leave to the non-denominational, whatever the non-denomination would be. For you, how much of it was mainly when you're seeing that Catholics were showing up outside of pro-life, outside of what do you call it, Planned Parenthood? Yeah. How much of it was that? How much of it was friends around you? How much of it was certain system, structure, organization that kind of fit into your personality? How much of it was which one of those?
I'd say it's 100% theology, reading sacred scripture. I think, when I was a teenager, and when I didn't go to any church, we didn't go to church. So, someone said, well, here's the Bible. And I think I read it through 3 times. I was just an avid reader. And then reading church history, the church fathers, since I didn't grow up in a tradition, I was always sort of open, what's a Methodist believe and a Lutheran and the Bible church, and, trying to figure out, who had the right take on it. Because I also kind of had this feeling or this call that I should be in ministry or a pastor. But then I was like, well, do I join the Methodist or the Baptist or the Assembly of God? I don't know. So I was always sort of exploring it. And for me, when I started reading the early church fathers, so these are the men who took over after the apostles, I started reading them, and they were talking about, the Eucharist and the body and blood and bishops and priests and deacons. And I thought, well, that hasn't been my experience. That sounds kind of Catholic. But as I explored that, and started reading the church fathers and getting into the 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century, I was moving along that way. The Episcopal Church is already kind of, in a way, traditional with its liturgy and comes from the Church of England. So it kind of has a Catholic ethos and a Catholic aesthetic to it. But I think what I was missing was really the theology of it. So I think it was that process. And then I think the emotional part that pushed me over was realizing, if we're going to be solid on thou shalt not kill and protecting the unborn and protecting the vulnerable, and the Catholics are doing a great job on that. So that was sort of the emotional push to leave where I was at, which was very difficult. I mean, I'd been ordained. I was in a church, a congregation, a parish. I had people. I had all this going on, and so to walk away from that was extremely, extremely difficult for me. But I say it's like the pearl of great price. I've been just so blessed in being a Catholic and the 7 sacraments, and I've been Catholic almost 20 years now, and still learning more. Just in Rome a couple weeks ago, got to see the Pope 3 times, and this time,
how was that?
It was amazing. Yeah, the last Pope was kind of trailing off on popularity. He wasn't doing so well. We could talk about that. And
he was interesting.
He's interesting. I wrote a #1 best-selling book called Infiltration, of which talks about him quite a bit. And I met him and gave him the book. It's quite critical of Pope Francis, the previous Pope. But now I was amazed. Like, the crowds in Rome are huge. He's out there in the Pope Mobile, and it is just packed out there.
Why do you think that is?
I think people, including myself, were very disappointed with the previous Pope. I think there was a lot of hurt, a lot of misunderstanding. And just to have a fresh, new face in the white, in the Pope Mobile, I think there's a lot of optimism. The jury's still out, but I remain prayerful and optimistic. But yeah, it was great. For me, going this time, I've been about 8 times, and we went to the catacombs. And you go down there, and they say there's 100,000 Christian martyrs buried down there. 100,000. There's 500,000 Christians, 100,000 people killed for Christ.
Wow.
And you just go in there, and you're literally just touching their tombs. And there's full size, and then there's even like little. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, we were in that one right there. And there's even little ones for children down there. And you're just thinking to yourself, these people, like their Christianity, their experience of Jesus Christ is so much more profound. Like I felt just lukewarm, weak sauce Christian down there because, you know, when they're going to church on Sunday, that could be the last one. Like they could be stormed in. And that was the story of thousands of early Christians. So to be down there and to experience that, to actually touch it, was very humbling and makes me realize.
This is your first time. You'd never been there before.
No, I've taught in Rome. I've been there a lot.
No, but the 100,000.
I've been to one of the catacombs. This was the catacombs of St. Calixtus, one of the bigger ones.
Got it.
I think it's like 10 miles of catacombs, all underground, like an anthill.
Do you think it's easier to be a Christian today or 200 years ago, 100 years ago? What do you think?
I think 100, 200 years ago.
Why do you think?
The pressure on us, especially young people, I think really like teenagers, 20-year-olds, the culture is so opposed to Christian faith, Christian belief right now.
Wouldn't that make it harder today than 200 years ago?
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry.
Oh, you meant it's harder today than before?
Harder today.
Okay.
Harder
So,
today.
and can you unpack that? Go a little bit deeper into why you think it's harder today than 200 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, we have children, and you just think about if you grew up a couple hundred years ago, you were in a cohesive, if you're in the West, you're growing up in a cohesive Christian society. Your school, your teachers, your friends, your family, your community, they probably all go to the same church or similar churches. And that has an effect on culture and it has effect on families. I feel now, especially if young people, we're swimming upstream. You know, they are just bombarded with TikTok and Instagram and social media. And there are so many different viewpoints that are opposed to Christianity that are being thrown in their face. So, you know, they might be exposed to, you know, I don't know, 5 anti-Christian thoughts, moments, whatever, a day, probably even more, actually. And then how much time are we spending with our kids to teach them, to catechize them? You know, it's just not enough to send them to Sunday school anymore. So we're swimming upstream. And if you look at the numbers, you look at the statistics, I mean, we're moving into a post-Christian society and young adults are not identifying as much. Now, those numbers have leveled out this year. We were seeing a lot of decline. Now we're starting to see flatline with young adults. So that's a good sign, but it's still not great. You know, it's still not positive. It's not up and to the right.
How much you think propaganda has been around for a long time, right? How much of propaganda you think was more used 200 years ago, 100 years ago versus today? What's easier? The usage of propaganda for and or against a church or religion, anything.
The power of propaganda, humans haven't changed and power structures haven't changed. So I think propaganda, whether you're defining it good or bad, I think has an equal power. It's just that now I think we're in the minority, culturally speaking. So we don't have the strength and the influence and the universal presence to, if you want to use the word, propagandize our culture, our society, our young people.
Yeah, I wonder if today, if I'm the enemy, and if I am China, and I'm going to confuse the crap out of the kids in America, Christianity, faith, whatever, maybe it's so easy to do. It's not hard to do through TikTok, Instagram, all that stuff. So I think the tools to use propaganda, to confuse, to divide, to pin parents against kids, it's a lot easier to be used today. And they're so distracted. They're so distracted with the amount of distractions I have today to keep my head down and read a book versus there's an article that came out from ChatGPT and MIT. I don't know if you saw this or not. MIT did a study on the power of ChatGPT and what it prevents you from doing. Do you have that, Rob? If you can pull, it just came out 3 weeks ago. Yeah, right there. ChatGPT may be eroding critical thinking skills according to a new MIT study, and it says it does a few things. The findings they had is the lowest brain engagement based on this EEG scan that they found across 32 regions. Of the 3 groups, ChatGPT, Google, and Search, and no tools. The ChatGPT group showed the weakest overall brain activity, which they're no longer like, what do you think? What do you think? Right? They're going straight to ChatGPT. And they kind of explain the mental laziness, soulless writing, poor memory retention, highest engagement from non-AI users. So not using AI, it's easier to have a conversation with them versus the guys that are just going straight on ChatGPT. Google outperformed ChatGPT. Loneliness correlation, programmers also affected. Children at greatest risk because they're using it a little bit more closely. Comprehension failure. I'm just wondering, the enemy you have today of bringing people to the Christian church, whether it's Catholics, whatever it is, non-denomination, the enemies today, how different are those enemies than they were even 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago?
We know St. Paul says that our enemies are not flesh and blood, but they're the evil principalities, the spirits of darkness. So I think ultimately our enemies is something metaphysical, something preternatural. And we're in a moment where, again, it's not just propaganda against us. It's actually, as the study shows, it's reducing critical thinking, which just makes people weak. It makes them, they're now the prey, and it's easier to get them. And it's just like working out. I just saw your amazing gym in here. If you don't work out, you get flabby, you get soft, you can't lift as much, you can't run. If you stop thinking and you actually have ChatGPT doing your thinking for you, what's going to happen to your mind? It's going to become weak. And then that just opens you up to propaganda of the negative sort.
How do you fight? How does the church fight against that? How do priests, pastors fight against that?
Well, I've been thinking about that a lot the last couple of years. I wrote this new book, Christian Patriot, 12 Ways to Create One Nation Under God. And it gives 12...
We have the link below for people that want to go place the order. It's going to be in the description and in the chat. Please continue.
Thank you for that. Yeah. I give 12 strategies, and a lot of it has to do with understanding culture, and that being a Christian is not simply about me and Jesus, my personal relationship with Jesus. That's very important. It needs to be there. There needs to be that faith commitment. There needs to be that daily life. But we also, as Christians going all the way back for 2,000 years, there has always been the element of leaven within the society, lifting up the society. And if you look over the last 2,000 years, where did the universities come from? The church, hospitals, the Catholic Church, orphanages, every single human rights, right? Dignity of women, all of these things come. How did that happen? Christians were making a positive impact on society. It wasn't just about going to church. It was about transformation of the person, but transformation of the society. So there's actually a theology of being a citizen, of being a patriot. And it's not just about imposing a faith on a culture. There might be examples of that in history, but in general, it was, we are providing truth, light, love, redemption, salvation. That's attractive to people. And then you implement that in cultural ways that make a huge impact on people. And I think really since World War I, World War II, I talk about it in the book, people have sort of bought into this false deal where after World War II, they're like, hey, we don't want to have any more of these like strong dogmatic beliefs. Look what happened. We had World War I, World War II. You just keep your beliefs in your closet, keep them out of the public square, and then you just pray, and then we're going to have this rational, neutral space in politics and culture and film and
this
art.
Woodrow Wilson era?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And Christians are like, okay, we'll take that deal. But what we didn't realize is there's a new secular religion. They say they're not a religion, but they have their own dogmas, they have their own clergy, they have their own feast days, they have their own parades, they're at your library reading books. They have a huge religious apparatus. And they say, we're not a religion,
Right.
but they are the new secular religion. And that began to take root probably in the 50s, 60s. And I think people of good faith, Christians, were like, yeah, I'm going to keep Christ is important to me, Christianity is important to me, I want to be a disciple of Jesus Christ, but they kept it and they allowed the public space to be neutral. And that vacuum has filled in with a new secular religion, and that's what we're fighting against. So we should have never taken that deal, and we should have filled that vacuum, or never allowed a vacuum to be created. We should have held a Christian standard, Christian excellence, virtue ethics, natural law, all these things that we had enshrined in what we call Western culture. It's really Christendom is the proper term. What we had in Christendom, and we've retreated, and now we're fighting a huge beast, Goliath.
Yeah, so it's interesting when you're saying we used to, before we had social programs. You go to the government for a social program.
Exactly.
You got your social program from the church.
That's right.
That's where you got it from. Before you needed unemployment, the church gave you the unemployment benefits, right?
That's correct.
Before you needed a place to stay, they got you a place to stay, right? Before you have to go through the government and taxpayers, and it wasn't the taxpayers. All of that was based on 10% of some of the people that were giving willingly, and some didn't want to give, and most that didn't give. And you still, with that 10%, were able to get it to take care of your local community until this thing got bigger, thinking we need more money.
And what's better is, Pat, you could say, well, I have a lot of money. I was raised an orphan or whatever. I want to support this orphanage. And it was charity. It was actual charity that you were doing it.
Totally makes sense.
Or I want to fund this department at the university. Wealthy, Christian excellent patriarchs were doing this for centuries and centuries. That's how all these cathedrals were built, and universities and town squares and piazzas and all of this beautiful. Everyone loves to go to Europe because they love to see all the beautiful stuff. Yeah, that was the church that did that. And that's the way we used to think. And we have retreated. And now we have this new secular religion building ugly buildings and trying to influence our kids through TikTok and take over. They're doing their own evangelization. They're doing their own missionary work. And we're sitting here thinking, well, we can't impose. I don't want to impose my faith on other people, so I'll just be quiet. Well, we lose that war every time. And again, I'm not talking about coercing people. You must become a Christian or you're going to prison. But we still have, it's okay for us to say, okay, well, if you're going to cite, Karl Marx and Shea and all these guys, well, I'm going to quote Moses. I'm going to quote Jesus Christ, St. Paul. Let's go. Battle of ideas. That's how we used to be. And we used to be a dominant culture. And we haven't even talked about Islam, but that's also, I think, in America, it's this new secular religion. The new secular religion is way advanced in Europe, and now that vacuum's starting to be filled with Islam.
Why do you think Christians and many Catholics are afraid of the religion of Islam?
Because historically it's violent. I know I'm not supposed to say that. It's supposed to be the peaceful religion, but Muhammad was a warrior. If you look at the first 200 years of the growth of Islam, it was a violent movement. And so that's scary to people, And to talk about Christians, you had Charles Martel and Charlemagne and the Battle of Lepanto and Malta and all these things where Christians came together and they said, man, the Turks are at the gates of Vienna. They get past Vienna, they're coming to Rome. They're coming to Paris. And they got together and they went and fought. That's another way of thinking. There's a chapter in the book I talk about, foreign policy as Christians. Do we need to start thinking in terms of foreign policy based on our deepest belief? Because I'm a citizen of the United States. I'm also a Christian. I'm a Catholic. I can't separate church and state. This side of me is my citizenship and this side of me is my soul.
Is that literally where you are? Because that was going to be one of my questions for you. Is that where you are? Where both go hand in hand?
Yeah, there has to be an integration because, look, a government, a society is a collection of people, right? And I can't bracket out the most important thing to me, which is Jesus Christ. I can't bracket that out of my life and be a citizen or to be a father or to be a worker. That is at my core of who I am. And so that is going to direct my decisions and the way I run my businesses, my family, HOA, on and on and on, just ripple it out. And when we did that, were there bad people that abused it? Yes. Were there bad kings or popes? And yes, we've seen all that. But I would say the net benefit has been tremendously good for humanity.
Yeah, I don't disagree. The question then becomes to isolate this topic of Islam, right? Muslim. And you see stats on what's going on in UK, in Europe, and a lot of different places. And Rob, can you pull up the one chart we showed earlier today about who's leaving UK in different countries and where they're going to, their net migration of millionaires? And this is business people that are job creators that you got to look at and say, why are people leaving? So here's a chart. I don't know if you've seen this or not. If you look at this and zoom in all the way to the bottom, okay, millionaire migration in 2025. Look at UK. They will lose the most millionaires due to sweeping tax changes and the closure of investor visas. On top of that, what is happening over there? The migration that's coming in. And then look at all the other countries you're looking at and go all the way to the top. If you go all the way to the top, it used to be U.S. number one. UAE is number one ahead of U.S., and you got a few other guys. And new poll came out that CNN was showing, whether it's New York Times, whether it's CBS, whether it's ABC, whether it's anybody, the number one issue for them is immigration, to get it squared away in America. They're not comfortable with it. And the pattern you notice is where they come from. Because for me, it's very simple. Who moves into what city and what happens to that city? If you're Armenian, Assyrian, white, black, Christian, Scientologist, Muslim, Pakistani Muslim, Shia, Sunni, Sikh, you name it, when you move to a city or state or country, does it get better or worse? And if it gets worse, why are we debating it? Why are we sitting there apologizing and making exceptions for it? Why do you think the walking on eggshells is so strong when it comes down to the religion of Islam?
Two things. The new secular religion is pushing this on us as an ideology, right? If you speak against it, you are racist, you are fascist. They just hit you with it every single time. The second thing, and Europe is way more advanced on this trail than we are, and that is the violent nature of it. I think there is a true fear. Europe has a longer memory than we have in the United States. We've never really gone saber to saber with the Turk and the Saracen and the Mohammedan. We've never done that. They have. France has. Hungary has. Romania has. Greece. All those countries have a national memory of saber to saber fight with the Muslim. And I think they're afraid. I think they no longer, their cup is empty. They no longer have the faith of their fathers that inspired them to go out and die outside the gates of Vienna or die outside the walls of Constantinople. They've lost the faith. And so I think when they see the violent enemy, there's just fear.
How do you change that?
You have to convert people. You have to create people who are fully in with the heart and the mind into Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and the life. And then they from that, through a path of discipleship, they begin to be transformed in the way they view the world. It's a worldview change. It's something that begins through a conversion, and then it begins to pour out into the society.
Well, then the challenge isn't that we're not converting, because we are converting. The Christian world population, what is it, 2.1 billion, some number like that? Muslim is what, 1.4, 1.5?
I think it's higher now. I think they're at 1.8. They're
Okay,
catching on us.
so 1.8, they're going to be passing us up in no time to where they're going.
I think 2050 or 2060, they're going to be hitting parity.
So you got population, what is the total population? Virtually, okay. Christianity is 2.3 billion. Oh, shoot, Islam is 2 billion now. Then you got Hinduism, 1.2, Buddhism, you got the rest from Judaism, it's 14 to 15 million. Okay, so if you look at 2.3 billion to 2 billion, go up percentage to look at the percent. We're at 28.8. They're at 25.6. We looked at the numbers, Rob, on how much they've improved in the last 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. You'll notice they went from nothing, you know, 600 million to 2 billion like this. More kids, all this other stuff. So then the question becomes, are we, in the insurance company, we used to call something fast start. You become a new recruit, we get you licensed, we get you to go out there and start selling, okay? The same recruit can be fast started by 5 different people, and one can be a lousy insurance agent, one can be okay, one can be good, one can be great, one is a professional. No complaints, no issues, proper business, follow up right way, asking for referrals, respectful, sending letters, sending cards, treating them well, being good citizen in the community where everybody trusts the way you're handling them. So to me, then, it isn't necessarily on whether we're converting or not, is how soft are the pastors and the priests at church, similar to your previous pope that you had, where they're almost apologetic. Hey, they're allowing the transgenders to come into church and get on the pulpit. I don't know if you remember that clip. I'm like, what is he doing? What are you doing having dinner with? This is how it's supposed to look like now, that we're supposed to be allowing the standards to be as messy. This was it, I think it was a year ago, right? A transgender woman to lunch, to have lunch with the Pope. Rob, where is this, by the way? This is...
I think it was Italy.
I'm not sure. I'll have to look.
You can keep playing it, Rob. Keep playing it. Let me see the clip. So I'm trying to get to the point where the, go a little bit fast forward to see what it is. I'm sure you remember this.
Yeah.
While this is happening. So then to me, what ends up happening when I see this, I see you are discipling weak disciples. You're discipling weak by not equipping them with the right questions, approach, fearlessness, yet humility, but humility with certainty, with a certain level of confidence. We don't have that. It's sloppy conversion. It's sloppy. And I'm not talking about everybody, by the way. I'm not sitting here saying every church does this, every priest does this, every pastor does this. So the moment there's friction, it's like, oh my God, let me back down. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to go be a regular guy. I don't want to experience this ever again, right? So they're not being equipped well. While on the other side, religion of Islam is maybe equipping their people with a little bit more of strength, confidence, and audacity. And we lack a little bit of audacity. We lack a little bit of that firmness to go out there. What would you say to this? On
100%. I wrote another book called Infiltration. It's the book most people know me from. And in that book, I give a 200-year history. I say in the 1800s, there was, and I prove it historically, and it's in the footnotes, there was, after the French Revolution, there was an intent to infiltrate the Catholic Church and all Christians in general in order to undermine them from within. And this is what we're seeing on the screen. So when I talk about the new secular religion or, atheism and transgenderism and all these things, it's not something that's just like, here we are, the Christians, here's the Catholic Church, and then here's them, and let's go to war. They're actually inside with us. They have infiltrated in, and they are working, and you see this in government. You see this in Trump's, right? That's how the enemy works effectively. When they lose the external war, they infiltrate and have an internal war. And that's another reason, I think, why we are so weak. 500 years ago, Christendom was united. We had the Protestant Reformation. We split into 30,000 different groups. That's weakness. And then we've had an infiltration in the last couple hundred years since the French Revolution of infiltrating what Jesus calls sheep's and wolf's clothing. They're amongst us. They're deceiving us. And so this puts us in even more difficult situation, right? And then, we have Pope Francis, who is making all kinds of questionable statements, policy changes, et cetera. And a lot of this, little inside baseball. In the Catholic Church, there was a council, the 21st Ecumenical Council, 1962 to 1965. It was called the Second Vatican Council. And the idea was, hey, humanity's changing. There's, modern advances in society. We're going to the moon, JFK's president, all these things. It's a great time. It's pre-Woodstock, it's great. And so this council updated a lot of things in Catholicism. And since then, within the Catholic Church, there's sort of a bifurcated, there's a division on how to approach that. Do we want to update, or do we continue with tradition? So I would consider myself a traditionalist. There's also the modernist, and Pope Francis is certainly the modernist. He wants to change with the times, update things, get along with everyone.
That's a method of caving.
It is. It's a complete.
The backbone isn't there.
That's exactly correct. And so once you give up all your distinctives in order to meet everyone where you are, you have nothing left.
How much of that has been a pattern? Because you can watch a leader and see their pattern. Like right now, Pope Leo, we can kind of go see some of the things he said in the past. He hasn't said much. He's very, he's kept it very close to himself. But there's enough where you can find out when they're going through the conclave on the process of it, who he is. At what point did people know Pope Francis was he always a little bit too liberal and forgiving and it's okay and trying to conform for everybody, allow everybody in? Or was there a moment where he had a backbone where he was tough and everybody wanted this guy?
I remember when he was elected and walked out on the loggia, and I just had this bad feeling in my gut. And I was like, oh.
So from the beginning.
This isn't good. But as a Catholic, he is the leader. He's the successor, we believe, of St. Peter. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to give him a chance. And that was in 2013. By 2016, 17, I was thinking, this is bad. on my podcast, I started being critical, and a lot of Catholics came after me. How dare you say that? He's the Pope and all that. And I said, well, look, we have over 200 previous popes. We have all these saints. We have all these dogmas and doctrine. Let's just compare what he's saying to the massive list of things we have, and it doesn't match up. There's some problems here, real problems. And I caught a lot of flack on that, but I think, on the other hand, my podcast blew up because I was saying things that people were thinking and struggling with, but was actually articulating them in the public. And, that's one of the hardest things I think about being a Christian, particularly being a Catholic, is you want to be faithful to God. You want to be faithful to Jesus Christ. But then there's also the leadership. And this is true in Protestant churches too. There's scandals, right? There's the pedophilia abuses. There's embezzlement. I mean, the Cardinal Archbishop of D.C., Cardinal McCarrick, was, doing bad stuff with kids, embezzling money. Fortunately, he got thrown out towards the end of his life. But you've got real wicked people amongst us. And that's, I think, another huge challenge. You got the enemy without, we have the enemy within. We're fighting two battlefronts.
Yeah, the one on the within is a tougher one.
It is.
The one on the outside, it's you can at least know. One thing with enemies, I trust my enemies sometimes more than I trust my own friends, because the enemy at least wants to kill you, and that's an honest relationship. In business and capitalism, I know what my enemy wants. He wants me to be out of business so he can get my market share. I trust my enemy because I trust what's his number one. If I got a pizza shop across the street and you're here, guess what? You want my pizza guys to come to you. I get it. You want my best guy that makes the best pizza to come to you. I get it. I respect it, what you're trying to do. And I have to find a way to keep wanting to compete. But when it's on the inside and you're seeing it, now how you handle it. So, okay, so let's go back to it. Specific to Islam and Christianity today, okay? What do you foresee happening? We know the way they're going right now, 20, 30 years in America. They're going to be growing. You're seeing Mamdani in New York, who is a radical leftist. You can call him a progressive socialist, democratic socialist. But when you use certain phrases, we know out of Karl Marx, seize the means of production and capital. That's, you've seen Red Atlas Shrugged, or you've read Communist Manifesto. I've read both of the books. He's a communist. And you're seeing what's happening with him. Ilhan Omar, you're seeing Detroit, Dearborn, you're seeing in your area, Colleyville, not Colleyville, but Plano, where they're building the Epic Center that, the governor is trying to work ahead. Our system and our Constitution has left it open for them to be able to come and infiltrate if they want to. There's nothing about our Constitution that doesn't allow them to not be able to compete. And they're not going to slow down until they get what they want. That's a form of competitiveness. If I believe in what I believe in, I'm going to come and take your market share, your members, your churches. I'm going to take, churches that you guys have converted into Muslims. How do you fight against that? And what do you foresee taking place in the future with this?
If things stay the same, we lose. I think that's obvious. Just look at the demographics. Just look at the curves. You can go on Grok or ChatGPT and say, Grok, draw for me a graph of the population rates and pick a country, and it'll draw it out, and you can see which year. That is going to happen, and we need to have a real come to Jesus meeting. Literally. It's about interior conversion, but it's also about the external expression. And when you have abortion, contraception, you have feminism. America, sadly, is, I think, last I saw, is either 1.6 or 1.7 TFR birth rate. That's horrible. We were holding strong for many years at 2.1, which is replacement.
That's right.
But, people, they get on X, they get on social media, and they're complaining and the immigration, and I generally agree with them. But if we are not reproducing ourselves through conversions, but even just in the most basic way, which is through procreation, we are done for. We are done. I'm a cattle rancher. Yesterday I was out, had a calf born, and was working with the cattle. If my cows had a 1.6 TFR birth rate, I'd be out of business. I'd be depressed. What's wrong with the cows? What's in the water? Right. What are they eating? Are they poisoned? Are coyotes killing them? What's going on? Yeah. Why are we at 1.6 per cow? You're out of business in 1 year. And yet we as a society are sitting here twiddling our thumbs, 1.6, and it's going down. And I think Muslims, I don't know what the recent is, but I think Muslims are around 3. It's not great, but it's definitely above replacement. Just run those numbers, run that concept. You're done. You're going to lose. You're going to be replaced. And so it's a chapter in the book in having a real conversation of what is marriage? What is family? Why do we have children? What is the purpose of matrimony? How do we raise our children? And are we truly open to being above replacement levels? That's a conversation. I don't think the Overton window has moved that far yet, but we need to get the Overton window moved. I mean, that's part of the reason why it's one of the chapters in the book is we need to have real conversations. Thank God you have 4. You're doing great. I got 8. We need people to start thinking about what is our duty to our patria. That's Latin, our fatherland. That's why I use patriot. Patriot is a virtue of devotion to the patria, and patria is Latin for fatherland. It has to do with honor your father and mother. What is your duty to humanity? Duty to God is first. Duty to humanity is, and all these young people, they don't want to get married, and there's a lot of good reasons for that, the way marriage laws and divorce and the way our economy is. There's a lot of reasons why young people aren't having marriages, family, children. We need to address that. But we really do need to have that discussion, or we're just done. Like, it's over. It's extinction.
Yeah, I don't think, I think right now, the way marriage, the package and the benefits of marriage is being sold, most people don't know how to sell it. The way the packaging of having kids being sold, most people don't know how to sell it. Years ago, real estate was going through a terrible time where people weren't buying homes. They were renting, and everybody became minimalist. And they're like, why would I buy a house? I'm just going to rent a house. And then they hired this marketing guy that came in, and he says, look, why do people come to America? Because the American dream. We got to tie owning a home to the American dream. So every commercial moving forward was, I'm living the American dream. What is the American dream? I'm finally a homeowner. Boom. Home ownership, American dream. Do you want to live the American dream? Babe, let's go buy a house. We're living the American dream. Real estate skyrocketed again. And I know next one is a bad example. It used to be pro-death. It wasn't pro-choice. Pro-abortion. Life insurance used to be called death insurance, right? Pro-choice used to be called pro-abortion, elimination, pro-elimination. Now it's pro-choice. Better word. I'm open to pro-choice. I'm not open to pro-abortion, right? But I'm open to pro-choice. What do you think, from your words, why should somebody get married? I'm a single guy. I'm a playboy. I'm having a good time. I'm running around. Do I really want to be just with one girl and, have to answer to my wife pick up the phone. If you don't pick up, you got an argument. What are you doing Friday night, Saturday night? I want to go out with the boys to the club and hang out. And you want me to give all that freedom up for marriage? And you want me to be having kids? Wake me up in the middle of the night. One of the kids gets a flu. Then all the kids get flu. And it's just a matter of time on when I'm getting the flu. It could be 3 weeks from now, a week from now, 2 months from now, saliva. I'm out of work. They're spitting on me. I'm changing their diapers. What a mess.
You're not selling it.
You're not selling it. Package it better for me. So why should a guy sitting here saying, dude, I just want to focus on my career. Lady focusing, I just want to focus on my career. I don't want to have kids get married. Why should somebody get married and have kids?
Well, I've heard you on the podcast talk about it. The joy, those moments with your children and watching them grow and develop. We have 8 children, and it is the highlight of my life. It is truly. Was it extremely difficult when we had 3 under 4 and you got diapers? Absolutely. But you know what? So was building a business. So was writing a book. You've done all these things. You hate it. There's times that you're like, this sucks. Why am I doing this?
Seriously.
It's not worth it.
Yep.
But then later on, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And people need to know that is the path of parenthood and family. Is there instant gratification? No, but we need to teach people delayed gratification, because I sometimes, when I'm enjoying something great in my life, a success, I think, there was a past version of Taylor Marshall who made these decisions and worked really hard for those 6 months or those 2 years. And that past version of Taylor Marshall gifted this moment to me because of what I did before. And you have to think about that delayed gratification. And that is Christianity. Christianity is, we are in a valley of tears. There is suffering in this life. We're all going to have problems. We're all going to die. We're all going to have suffering. We live not for the instant gratification of the drugs, the sex, the party, all these things. We defer, we restrain ourselves from these things because we believe in a higher good and that it will be better. That has to be taught to people. We live in a more hedonistic society. And I think what you're saying there is also we have to sell it. You know, we have to show that it's not just the American dream, it's the human dream. Everything that's alive wants to procreate, to reproduce, to expand the good. And maybe it's, you know, maybe people have a bad view of themselves, or maybe there's some self-hatred, or there's fear because their parents were divorced, or things they went through from a child. And like, I don't want to expand that. But I think if you have a right relationship with God, there's healing in those things, and there's a new perspective. There's a transcendent view. You know, it's not just looking around here anymore. You're starting to look up there, and you're like, you know, I'm just for a moment. I'm for 80, 90 years, but something goes on. And I always tell my kids, all my kids, I'm like, look, I want you to be smarter than me. I want you to have a better marriage than mom and me. I want you to be wealthier. I want you to be holier. I want you to be better, smarter, everything than me. My whole goal is just to slingshot you into more excellence. And I'm sure you're the same way.
No question about it.
Right?
Yeah.
That's an amazing thing. That's an amazing thing. I don't want to hold my kids back. I want them all to be, when I die, hopefully better than I am along the path of what God wants for them in this world. That is the ultimate project to live for.
8 kids. Which number was hardest? Because when you have 2, they'll tell you when you go to 3, that's tough, right? Because you know the whole triangle offense or zone or whatever they talk about. What number was tougher than 3?
3 and 4 is the hardest.
That's it.
Well, because they're so young. They're so young, and you're dealing with young
Makes sense.
kids. You know, as they reach 10, especially when they start reaching, we haven't had like really bad problem kids or teenagers. You know, you've got some of the older ones, and they're helping mom with dinner, and you know, there's kind of a team effort that happens, and I think that's another great thing for kids, to be part of this large community where there is fighting and there is bickering, and you know, he took this and he didn't do the chores and tattletelling. That's all. But I think that also rounds you out and polishes off the rough edges for people. And that's something else I think we're kind of missing, is sort of the joy and the benefit, the outcome of a large family. You'll meet all the guys all the time, like, oh, I got 100 employees, I got this. It's like, well, you know, let's have go from 2 kids to 3 kids.
How many friends you got that have 8 kids? Same mom and dad.
Man, I've got one of my buddies, a mentor, Greg. We just went to Rome together. He's got 12.
Catholic as well?
Catholic. Guy across the street from me, Catholic. He's got 8.
Same husband and wife.
Same
father and mother.
wife. Okay. I'd say I'd probably know 30.
You know 30?
I'm Catholic, Pat.
Santorum's also got 8 kids. Santorum had 8 kids, if I'm not mistaken, right? Something happened to one of them, I believe.
Yeah.
There was a challenge that happened with them. How many kids did Santorum have?
I think you're right. I think he has 8. Yeah, there it is.
Yep, right there.
There it is, 8.
Yeah, interesting.
And that's one of the things about being Catholic is, you know, in 1968, Pope Paul VI came out very controversial, and he says contraception's wrong. It's a sin. Now, 90-something% of Catholics don't follow that teaching, but it's on the books. And when you think about it, you know, when you think about the mystery of matrimony and the mystery of what sex actually is, the way God designed it, I think there's a lot of wisdom in what Pope Paul VI says in the Catholic Church. And you know, when people find out I have 8 kids with the same woman, they're like, "Okay, are you Catholic, Mormon, or Muslim?" That question right there, I think, is revealing to where we are in a society, and it is a blessing. It is the most rewarding thing I've ever done, and I think you would agree with me that the joy of seeing your children succeed, even fail, learn, grow, it's such a profound human experience. It pulls you out of your own egoism into the life of other people. And another thing I think it does is it bonds you to your wife, because you have to be together. If you have 1 or 2 kids and they go off to college, yeah, I mean, you don't really, you know, maybe you do get divorced. I don't know, but when you're dealing with a team like that, you really learn to bond with each other. You really learn to work as a team. And just as it's kind of chiseling off the rough parts on the kids, I think it's also doing the same for the husband and wife. So
interesting. Can you search which religion has the most kids? And not even, I don't even know if I want to go religion. Do Catholics, Mormons, and Jews and Muslims, specifically them? Can you go a little lower, Rob, so I can see what you're typing up? There you go. Okay. Who has more kids? So interesting when you say you're Catholic.
2.9.
Mormons are holy moly, Mormons.
Mormons, they're doing it.
They're doing it.
They're doing it.
Right now, while they're watching this, they're going to take a break right now and step away.
Catholics are at 2.
Catholics are at 2.
Below replacement. Jews, 2.3.
But is it?
Can you put in how many do traditional Catholics have? That's kind of where I'm at. That's what I am. That's like Mel Gibson, like we're like the old dinosaur Catholics. Put in how birth rate for traditional Catholics?
Okay, there you go.
That's 3.6, 4.2.
That's what we want to talk about.
Yeah.
3.6 to 4.2. And so when you tell me 30, dude, I don't know if I know.
I would say on Sunday at Mass, more people are under 15 than over 15.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
That's a very healthy sign.
I always say if your church isn't crying, it's dying. Like you need to hear those babies.
Kids, yeah, makes sense. That's good. So from the moment he said that, contraception, what year was that? You said 1960s?
I mean, it's been the first time that any Christian said contraception okay was the Anglican Church of England, 1930. Lambeth Conference. That was shocking to the world that Christians said, "Oh, you can use condoms," and they were like, "Whoa!" Because Christians
when was
were
the first time.
1930.
And what's the name of the person that said you can use condoms?
It was the a conference of Anglican non-Catholic bishops called the Lambeth Conference, I believe.
So the Lambeth Conference.
That was 1930. That was the first time any Christian had ever said you can practice artificial contraception. Did it come up? There it is. 1930, Lambeth Conference. And so then when that happened, there was all this confusion in Christianity. Can we do this or can we not do that? And finally, 38 years later, 1968, Pope Paul VI issued a document called Humanae Vitae, and he says you may not practice artificial contraception. Hugely controversial. Still controversial to this day.
Still controversial till this day. Like even members say, I would
say,
about this.
Your Joe Biden Catholic crowd, they're like, that's dumb. We're going to contracept, right? But those who are traditional Catholics, they're like, we're never going to use a condom. We're never going to use contraception. Let's roll the dice and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, that's in 1930, first time they say this at the Lambert Conference. Question is, was he the founder of Trojan Condoms? That's kind of what I want to know. Maybe there's like a
majority investor.
It's like an 18% owner. He's like, oh, now it makes sense. The guy's a billionaire. Yeah, it started off with targeting Catholics first, but what was it? You said this was in where? This was in Church of England?
Church of England, Protestant Church of England. Lambeth Conference was a group of their bishops and clergy. They all got together. They discussed it, and they said, and actually, let me clarify. They said it can only be used by married couples. They said using it outside of, you shouldn't be even having sex outside of marriage. So that's off the table. They were just saying married couples can discern to use it in the Protestant Church of England. And then the Catholic Church says, no, we're not going to allow that.
Why, though? Why? Is it to say the act and the behavior is purely to procreate? Is that what the mindset is?
It's not purely to procreate because God associated with it extreme pleasure and bonding. So it's not solely to procreate. But when if I said, well, let's look at the ear, and we did an anatomical study of the ear. Oh, it's for hearing. Like we can hear things, and the eyeball and the stomach and all these things. If you look at human genitalia, they're designed for procreation. So if you're going to completely remove that from the human experience, you're working against nature. And here we are, 2025.
Have a lot of pissed off people if you did that. If you remove that from the human experience, they would go protest.
Yeah.
They'd be very upset about that if you did that. Now, in the last 5 years, it's become popular to cut your dangling off and go through the
See, look where it led us.
Yeah.
Look where it led us. Well, and also think about this, Pat. If you remove, if a man and woman are married And this is the inner sanctum of their marital life, right? That's the exclusive element of holy matrimony. If you say, okay, well, we're going to remove that procreative element, ultimately there's the male and there's the female, and they come together and have a child. If you start to remove that, you're also starting to take away the idea of what marriage is, and you're also taking away the procreative difference between man and woman. Now, just extrapolate that over time, and you're going to redefine marriage altogether, and you might even redefine what it is to be a man or a woman, right? You're kind of breaking past the holy of holies of that veil and getting in there and changing something for the first time. And, you know, even like Tucker Carlson's been like saying, man, I've rethought this contraception thing. Like, this is big. And Dr. Peterson said, feminism is not all these women being heroic. Feminism was the invention of the birth control pill. It gives them the power to go into the workplace and prevent pregnancy for decades at a time. Without that magical power, you would not have feminism.
I wonder if it's going to flip. Like even right now, I wonder if it's going to flip, and we're going to get to a point where it's about having 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 kids. I wonder if, because that's a massive flip. When you live a selfish life, temporarily, it's very warm and fuzzy. And by the time you find that it's not, it's kind of too late. You know, you're kind of like, shoot. Like the whole feminist movement. Let me tell you, and then you're 66 years old. Biggest mistake of my life was joining. You know, you see that taking place.
Hey, I'm Dr. Taylor Marshall, and I run a podcast and write books on philosophy, theology, Catholicism. My wife and I have 8 children, so if you'd like to connect and ask me any questions on any of these topics or anything else, please connect with me on Connect.
Have you been following Rogan talking about he's going to church?
I have. It's fantastic.
Do you have a clip of it, Rob?
I do.
Is this him talking about it?
Yes.
Go for it.
Wait, are you going to church too, or is that bullshit?
I have been to church.
Oh, fuck.
Why? Have you ever been to church before?
I've been.
It's actually very nice. They're all just trying to be better people. It's a good vibe.
Why don't you go to a Catholic church?
I tried that. I did that.
I went to St. Pat's in New York.
Yeah, that's a beautiful place.
So nice. Some guy gave me a rosary. I keep it.
If it's not Catholic, nice. Which one is it?
It's just a Christian church.
A non-denominational Christian.
Church.
Yeah, all this fucking
Joel
gibberish.
Osteen shit?
I'm just giving all my money to Osteen.
What do you think about this?
I think it's great. I mean, he has been bringing on a lot more Christian conservative thinkers, and so I've kind of, I don't watch every single Joe Rogan show, but I've watched tons of them, hundreds of them, and I've seen that trajectory. I'm not totally surprised. You've seen, Candace Owens became Catholic last year.
Yeah, I saw that.
Jordan Peterson's wife became Catholic.
She looks like she's on track for 8 kids, by the way.
They just had number
3.
Yeah, no, they're 4, I think.
That 3 sounds. You're right. Yes,
yeah.
They're on track. They're on track.
They're traditional Catholic. Yeah. They're hitting those. We got to pump those numbers.
They're
people.
Going.
Pump the numbers. Going. It could be. I think in some like Mormon circles, and maybe even in some Catholic circles, it could be a sometimes perceived by people on the outside as a status symbol. They're like, "Oh, you're trying to flex on us because you have a Mercedes van with 7 kids in it, or whatever." And I've never thought like, "Oh, I want to flex on people by changing diapers for years upon years." You know what I mean? But honestly, it's so many times it does happen to us now, because our youngest is 9, our oldest is turning 23. When we're out like a posse, so many people come up and they're just like, "This is so this is so beautiful.
I love it.
Thank you." People, especially older people, but even some younger people. After church the other day, this couple came up to me and they're like, "We just got married last weekend." And I was like, "Congratulations, welcome to matrimony. It's going to be hard, it's going to be great." And they're like, "You have any advice?" And they're like, "We love seeing your family." And I just gave them some advice. And so there are these people who I think have maybe lived a degenerate lifestyle, and they party, and they got out in time. And they realize, I really want to live that transcendent life.
To get out of that degenerate lifestyle quick. It's because you can prolong that for 30 years.
I mean, you and I know, like, we had friends, you can drink and party, but once they start hitting 40, you can see it on them.
Yeah. It's like, dude, relax.
Yeah.
Like, use that, aging for the right investment, and it's kids. But Rogan, so you're saying the trajectory. You watch hundreds of episodes. You've kind of seen where he's going. What is the trajectory that you've seen him go through? Because he is the modern day Johnny Carson, right? Where people are watching him go through it. And I would also put the modern day Johnny Carson with some kind of because with Johnny was all entertainment, right? Yeah. There's an element of here learning, education,
I think he's
curiosity.
He's a Johnny Carson, but he's also kind of a tribal leader because he has all these people.
No question
in
about
his wake. I started. I was a jiu-jitsu guy, and I was watching him because of jiu-jitsu and UFC and all that. And then he started getting more into the intellectual and having professors on. I was like, oh, this is interesting, like a new turn for Joe Rogan. And then through kind of the Trump years, he started, saying something like, that sounds kind of MAGA, Joe. Like you're starting to go a little MAGA. And then he had Trump on, and I saw he was covering like the Shroud of Turin, and he's had a couple of evangelical Protestants on, and I'm like, they aren't just showing up here accidentally. Clearly, we both do podcasts and interview people. You kind of explore the space, like that person would be interesting. That would be interesting.
Right.
So he's clearly curating these guests, and he's exploring it. So when I saw that, I was happy for him. I think he grew up Catholic and early on left it. I think that's his backstory. But I think it's a great trajectory, and we're starting to see it with so many people, athletes, people in the public eye. There is an end to degeneracy. You can only be so gay, so many genders, so, You
can only be so gay? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
You can only be so gay.
Yeah, you can never go full gay, right? But you can only go... there's only so many drugs and so many experiences and so many, different varieties of partners. You eventually come to the abyss of being, and you're like, is this all there is? There's a whole book of the Bible, Ecclesiastes. He says, I tried everything, food, women, everything, and everything's vanity of vanities. I found no meaning. I found no hope. I found no joy. And then he says, so what is the meaning of life? And he says, it's to fear the Lord. That's a transcendent leap. You're removing yourself from what you are in the moment and what you desire in this moment, instant gratification. You're like, I'm going to fear the Lord. I'm going to live for something beyond. And what's great about Christianity is it's not just a transcendent deity like Allah. It's the Word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. Like Jesus Christ, the Son of God, comes and lives amongst us. Yeah. And, we just had that horrible flood in Texas. I don't know if you saw that.
Of course.
Oh,
terrible.
Gosh, it's horrible.
Oh, my God.
Absolutely.
The kids, the stories, the father breaking the arm and window and dying and telling the kids, you guys go. No, it's just devastating.
It's horrific to even. And people have been asking me, like, oh, you got a PhD in philosophy. How do you solve the problem of evil? You can't solve the problem of evil. You read the book of Job. God handles it, and he's like, you don't know. You don't get to know. But what we do have is we have the idea that the Son of God became flesh. He dwelt amongst us. He was ridiculed. He was persecuted. He was punched in the face. They spat in his face, says the Bible. They put a crown of thorns on him. They whipped him to shreds. They made him carry the cross. They crucified him. They continued to laugh at him and mock at him. He experienced human suffering. He did not draw away from the human experiences. And he absorbed the evil of the world. And then he dies. And then he rises again on the third day, and you'd expect, like, if it's a Hollywood movie, he'd be like John Wick, like Rambo, just coming back like, you bastards, look what you did to me. But he says, peace, I forgive you. Come unto me. The kingdom of God is at hand. And the fact that Jesus Christ dwells amongst us, you look at all these parents that are grieving, there's a couple, they had 2 Catholic young girls, they died holding each other, holding their rosaries, just absolutely horrific. I was talking about on my podcast yesterday, I was crying. I was like, if this happened to my daughters, I don't even know how to handle this. But there's no answer to it philosophically, but there is the reality that Jesus is in the valley of tears with us. He's crucified. And the fact that God is with us and came down to be with us provides consolation to it. We won't know till we get to heaven. But the fact that he did come down and he was with us and he suffered with us, no other religion has that. Nothing. It's our faith. And to me, that's why I'm a Christian. That's why I love Jesus Christ. That's why I believe in him. That is the story of all stories.
Yeah, it's beautiful when you're saying that, because I wrote down a bunch of different things to ask you a question on the process you go through. For me, just living a selfish life, going through it, whether it's pre-army, army, bitter towards life and different people in your life on what happened and the amount of people let you down, disappointed, and you just kind of feeling this victim, oh my God, poor me, and all this other stuff. And you're like, relax, buddy. And then I go from that to certain incidents that happened. I've shared the stories about what happened with my mother when she called me, and a few other instances. Then I go and I meet a group in Pasnaz, Glendale. I do Bible study with these guys. And a friend of mine, one of my friends, ended up taking his own life after the Bible study because he was addicted to Vicodin. It was very tough. One of my favorite people in the world. And we'd stay up from Friday, 6 o'clock at night till 2 o'clock in the morning. And he was an expert in philosophy, Pastor Mano. And we would talk philosophy, Aristotle, Stoicism, all these, Seneca, and what about this, and what about, how he went from being a cynicism to Stoicism because that's how the concept of cynic came about. I'm like, oh my God, I'm enamored by this. And a couple of years later, I become a Christian. January 21st of 2004, I give my life to Christ at this church in Porter Ranch, Shepherd of the Hills. And I was the guy Saturday nights in Pasadena holding up signs, John 3:16, Jesus is coming, outside of nightclubs at 2 o'clock in the morning. No one in a million years, not many people know this story. But some of the guys that knew me from that era, like, what are you doing outside of the nightclub? I said, bro, this thing's changed my life, bro.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, my God. Like, well, there's no way. We're going to see you at the after hours. You ain't going to see me anywhere. And then it was that shift. It was that shift. And the types of energies it brought into my life was so beautiful, but also tough. The accountability, the temptations increased. Now that they knew what life I wanted to live, the number of people knocking on the door in birthday suits increased for whatever reason. It's like, hey, you're going to say no to this? Damn, get out. Leave the house, right? You're 25, 26, 27, trying to go through this. But it wasn't easy. It was challenging. But the life I live today, I cannot believe the life I live today. I feel like I'm the luckiest man alive for what God has given me.
What would you say if you could go back and tell that young Pat in that moment?
While he's already gone through it, or he's going through it?
The moment he had the conversion. What would you go back and tell yourself?
I would just,
because I'm sure at the moment you were like, "Am I really in on this? Is this for me?"
I almost wouldn't tell him anything.
You wouldn't,
because you got to go through it, bro.
That's true.
I'm gonna be like, no, like my son. I dropped him off at a certain university. I'll announce in 3 weeks. He's at a university. He's going first time ever. He's away from us for 13 days, and I wrote him this long text while he's going there, and very long text message. It's private. I'm not going to share it publicly because he wouldn't like me doing that. But I wrote this message to him. I'm just kind of like, hey, Daddy, this is what I want you to know. Here's what your dad is thinking about. I'm kind of going through it. And as I'm typing, and I keep making it shorter. Right? And then eventually I send it out to him. And a part of what he's going through as a 13-year-old, he's got to go through it.
Yeah.
You got to give 10, 20% and just make sure you have the right guardrails. This is the first time we've left the guardrails out. I was away from my dad for a year and a half, from 10 to 12 years old, when my parents got the nasty divorce. I only talked to him one time in a year and a half, and I grew the most at 18 months. It was the scariest 18 months of my life. As a 10-year-old, I left Iran, I don't speak German, and I'm in a refugee camp. But I had to be like, hey, stop acting like you're going to be okay. But where is he? I need my dad. Like, you're kind of going through this, and you don't like God at the time because of all the things that happen in Iran, and you have to lose all your friends that you loved. So I had to go through it. I think I would tell Patrick, you got to go through it, bro.
Yeah.
It's going to be some weird moments you're going to have, and you're going to get tested, and let's see how you handle it. Instead of saying, that one girl's going to show up. Don't do this.
Yeah.
That one thing's going to happen. It's going to be like, let's see what you're going to do, buddy. But the reality of it is, God's with you. You're not alone.
That's right.
So you're not going through this journey. Whenever you feel fully lonely, get on your knees, pray, and try to stay there as long as possible, as much as possible, as close to him as possible. And then the bigger and bigger life got, I realized there's no way in the world I can do anything big by myself. Not me. Oh my God, look what you built, bro. Yeah, I work very hard. I mean, people who know me, they know I work very hard. But the number of miracles that's happened, I can't take credit for that. It's a beautiful thing. I'm grateful for it, but I can't take credit for that. But the lifestyle of a degenerate, for how long? What is new? You're not going to break Will Chamberlain's record.
No.
You know what I'm saying? You're just not, bro. The math doesn't add up, right? You're not going to go be what Hugh Hefner. By the way, did you see why Hugh Hefner became a Playboy? Have you seen the video why he became?
I don't know why.
Rob, have you seen why Hugh Hefner became a Playboy? Oh, man, I saw this clip the other day. Watch this. I can't even believe I'm showing this with Dr. It's not even in my notes. Rob, I got to send you this clip because I don't even think I've...
Hugh Hefner tangent.
Well, but I'm going to tell you how amazing this story is going to be here when you see this. And you know what you're going to realize? You're going to see the pain. You're going to... Dude, instantly, first thing I saw is I said, dude, I relate. But watch this. Rob, you don't have that. I have it right here. And he explains it in such a... I found it. Here we go. Oh, you got to watch this. How he went from a guy that wanted to be a good man living a good life to all of a sudden Playboy, womanizer, doing what he did. He tells a story to you exactly what happened. Watch this. I think a lot of young men today will relate to this. Can you make it a little bit bigger? Go for it. Press it from the beginning, refresh, and find a way to get the audio. There you go, real quick so we can, let me see. Go for it.
Marriage. Virgin.
I went into marriage.
In the sense that I had slept with only one person before in my life, the woman that I then married. Right after I was engaged, my wife-to-be had an affair and told me about it just a short time before the wedding. That, in combination with the Puritan background, had a dramatic impact on me. And I am absolutely certain that a part of what lay behind the establishment of Playboy was a throwing off the chains of personal hurt and indignity, and simultaneous with that, a quest for some better way. I went into my marriage.
Wow.
Have you ever heard this before?
I've never heard that
I just
before.
heard this last week. I
Doesn't
never
surprise
knew
me.
about this.
Doesn't
Rob, had you
surprise
ever
me.
heard this before? What's your impression when you hear this? How do you process this?
It doesn't surprise me. I think a lot of young men, especially nowadays, just with the whole OnlyFans culture and all the promiscuity, I think a lot of them are very jaded. And you kind of see them sort of spin off into sort of very right-wing ideology, or you see them just go all in on hedonism. I think it's a pretty natural young man response, wouldn't you say?
I think so as well. And you look, I've had Andrew Tate on many times, and he and I spoke today. And we have a very interesting relationship together. We live complete different lives. It's not the same lives at all, but we get along, and you know, we can have the conversations, and I enjoy talking to him every time. And I know a lot of people get upset when I say this, but I enjoy it. Every time I ask him a question about, you know, girl that broke his heart and publicly humiliated him, and maybe went and, you know, hooked up with another guy that you were so embarrassed, like, for the rest of my life, I will never, ever allow another woman to break my heart like this again. Typically, men who go this extreme, it's either their mother that hurt them in a way that's very weird, and it's either their a woman they followed everything by the book. I'm going to save myself for this, and I'm going to do this, and then all of a sudden, bam! It's like, dude, I am never allowing another woman to have this kind of da-da-da-da, and I'm gone, right? What's more painful than something like this? So, you know, as men are going through different challenges and different pain, the process is going to be very difficult. But this is why you need God in your life, man, because you know what's one of the first things that Pastor Mano told me? What year was it? 2003, 22 years ago. You know, I'm like, listen, you know, I've gone to church, and, you know, this, and that, and there's all these people that are this, and, you know, pastors that I saw on stage, and like, you know, they're hooking up with one of the members and that. And I saw this. He said, that's why I didn't want to be affiliated with a church. He says, look, if you ever judge your relationship with God horizontally, you'll always be disappointed. If it's vertical, you won't be disappointed.
That's right.
If it's horizontal, you'll always be disappointed. And I'm sitting there saying, what's he talking about? If it's based on other human beings and how they're going to treat you, you will always be disappointed because you're disappointing other people. We're sinners.
That's right.
You, I don't mean you. I mean you as in us, human beings,
me
right?
included.
Yeah, all of us. So I sat there. I said, all right, cool. Well, I'm going to try to do my best to see if I can keep this relationship vertically going so you can minimize the amount of disappointments, even though it's going to happen. Because we're human beings.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
And part of it is, it's, you know, Jesus says, take up your cross daily. There's a daily element to it. It's not a one and done. I know some people try to present it that way theologically, but there is, just like a marriage or a friendship or a business, there is a constant return and a building upon it. And that's how you have to be with Christ. He waits for you every morning. And his mercies are new every day. And there's new challenges, new struggles, new pains, new successes, new joys. It has to be dynamic like that.
Yeah, I love it, and you know, I also understand young men that hopefully young men will see this, and they kind of go through it. They're like, oh, dude, what was it? By the way, you know, if you're a young man watching this, and you want a couple, recommendations on stuff to read, I'll give you 3 book recommendations for young men. Ready? First one's going to be Samson Syndrome. I read this 15 years ago. Mark Atterbury, I don't know what his name is. Is that what it is, Rob?
Yep.
Oh, I still remember. Okay, good. Samson Syndrome. Go read it, okay? What you can learn from the baddest boy in the Bible. Good luck putting this book down, okay? Mark Atterbury. Second book I will recommend is King, Lover, Warrior, Magician. It's a very different book. And it's not a book that, it actually explains the pains young boys. I don't know if you've read this one or not. It's
familiar with the archetypes, right?
Yeah. Archetypes. Some of the stuff is controversial. A guy read it yesterday on Manect, so responds back to me and says, you sure you want me to read this book? Because I'm at a section that kind of contradicts what you're saying. I said, no book you're going to read that's going to be 100%. So you have to be able to manage the contradictions in a book. But I think those 2 books, and the last one I would say is No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah.
I think too many men have spent too much time with their mothers, and they become too soft, and you need to kind of man up if you. And I even had the guy on a podcast many years ago. Very interesting conversation. This guy. It's not a faith-based book, but the Samson Syndrome is a faith-based book. But if a man is going through it and they relate to this, Hugh Hefner guy that was a big figure in today being Andrew Tate's.
Yeah,
man, you got to go through your transition because living that life is very tough and lonely, and like this, it's gone.
Can I recommend one?
Sure.
I think every young man should read the book of Proverbs in the Bible. It's 31 chapters. You read 1 chapter a day. It's like God set it up for a monthly read. And the book of Proverbs talks about sluts and whores and debt and business and bad deals and contracts and marriage. I mean, everything that a guy 15 to 30 is dealing with, it's over and over in the book of Proverbs. And it's amazing that guys haven't read, and men and women, but guys, especially young men, 31 days, read the book of Proverbs. It's going to change your life.
It truly will.
Yeah.
It truly will change your life. By the way, transitioning because you're PhD philosophy, right? So Stoicism. First time, when some of these things had an influence on my life, Stoicism was one of them. When I read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, I had my sons read Meditations. It's a phenomenal book. Out of all the writings, everything, the only thing they could find is Meditations because they burned the stuff. I don't know what happened with the history of it. And I got really connected with Stoicism. Who was who wrote
Epictetus?
Epictetus, right? And can you tell me the history of how Stoicism came about, and then your opinion on Stoicism for young men?
Yeah, so the history, kind of a philosophy, Greek philosophy. You got Socrates, right? He's the number one, and then his disciple Plato, and then Aristotle. So those are your 3. And Aristotle discipled Alexander the Great,
That's right.
king emperor. So
2 million
that kind of sets you up sort of what's going on. Socrates and Plato are a little bit more emphasized on the forms and the heavenly realities. Aristotle's a little bit more on the integration of form and matter down here. That's all great. So there was Zeno and the Stoic philosophers. They're named after the Stoa, which is an architectural feature in Athens. So they're named after basically where they met, right? And they actually saw themselves as an integration of Plato and Aristotle. They're kind of a synthesis, the Stoics. And the Stoics, I mean, kind of the the 101 version is emotions and passions are dangerous. And so you must still your soul by denying your emotions and your passions. And so a practice that Stoics would perform is they'd go 30 days eating the basest bread and the worst wine. And they would say to themselves every day, is this what you fear, Pat? Cheap wine, stale bread? Is this what you fear? It's not that bad, you know, kind of just to get it out of you. And sometimes they would just say, what's the worst possible thing you could happen to you? And just spend 30 minutes just driving down that lane and just getting freaked out. And that's the Stoic, and I think it appeals to the masculine man because it is the ultimate pre-Christian philosophy of don't live by your emotions, don't follow, you know, the girl in the red dress, you know, don't trade today for tomorrow. Like you need to be, and he said, and Stoicism says, happiness is in virtue and in stillness of the soul. Let me repeat that. Virtue, doing the right thing. And a virtue is a habit towards the good. So if I just help an old lady once, that's a good deed. If I help old ladies every single day for a year, that's a habit called a virtue. And if you do bad things every day, like look at porn every day, a habit that's bad is called a vice. So you have virtue and vice. They say you will be happy. And Aristotle and Plato teach this. They're not even Christian. Right? They're not going to Bible studies. You will be happy. You will find joy. You will find fulfillment in living the virtuous life. These are ancient Greek philosophers. And so I think a lot of young men, they read that, and it's, you know, especially if you were raised like Southern Baptist or something, and you're like, I don't want to hear a preacher. And they go and they read Marcus Aurelius or some of these ancient Greek philosophers. Aurelius was a Roman emperor, but before him, the Greek philosophers. They're like, oh, this makes sense. I want this. I like this, right? And then often what happens, Pat, is those same guys then later on are like, yeah, but I need Christ in it too. I need Christ on the cross. That's kind of, in a way, the ultimate
I think
Stoic
that's such
moment.
a great combination, though, bro.
It is.
What a great if you can find a way, and I think if you can find a way to balance the two, you know, the philosophy of Stoicism helped me a better man, friend, father, businessman. The fear of God, and let me tell you, my level of fear for him is ridiculous. Most people are like, what do you mean by that? I say, yeah, I wish you know how scared I am. That is a place where, you know, my energy changes very quickly because what he's given me, I'm grateful, and the fear is there. I'll never forget that energy when it came in. That combination for a man, I think it's very powerful. And it's trusting, it's capable, it's upside. Woman probably wants a husband like that, feels protected by that. Yeah. Kids want to follow a man like that.
It makes you into an oak where you're rooted. And women are attracted to that. That's another thing. I think a lot of young guys out there, they don't understand what women are attracted to. You know, I think the book No More Mr. Nice Guy taps into that a little bit, you know, just, you know, listening to what women say they want in the public sphere and then sort of conforming to that to be the nice guy. They realize they lose every time. It doesn't work. Well, women want that. They want to be brought onto an adventure. They want a man who's stoic. I mean, just look at all the, you know, great heroes in the movies that women are attracted to, James Bond and so on and so forth. You know, they're about to get killed, but they make a joke of it, you know. And they're courageous and they live on the edge. And that's how we should be living as men. If you're not afraid, if there's something that you're doing you're just completely at ease all the time and you're not pushing it and you're like, how am I going to overcome this? You know, are you even living? You're not.
Yeah.
You're not. And I think Stoicism is what helps you go from A to B to C, or maybe towards the end of your life you're at X, Y, and Z and you're like, man, this is intense. You know, I don't want to retire and just go limp. I want to hopefully go out with my boots on. Yeah.
And first time I got a hold of this whole concept, I was like, man, this. By the way, who is this, Rob? Do you know who that person is? Who is the person that's speaking?
I don't. I'll take a look and see.
First see who it is before I play the clip. So I'm actually curious to know what his background is and what he does before I play the clip to see his thoughts. Because he talks about marriage and women, and his answer is very weird. You may or may not agree with it. I just kind of want explain. Who is he? Is he a pastor? Is he anything related to faith, or what was his job? Conservator, Jewish family. Play the clip. See if you agree with this.
Okay.
I'm just curious to know what you say about this. Very interesting what he says. Go ahead.
We're saying that a father represents God, but what does a mother represent?
The devil. Never forget that.
I don't know if I agree, but listen to what he says. Listen.
Adam listened to his wife. He hearkened to the voice of his wife. Remember that. And remember it well. Never listen to a woman. You listen to her, but don't follow her. You know, women always support the ambitions of men. They always support that fallen, rebellious nature which is ambitious. And men are always working for the approval of that woman, for the love of that woman. Right. And the approval of that woman only makes him more ambitious and more ambitious and more ambitious. His whole life revolves around the reassurance that ambition and pride is the way of being. See? That's the whole thing. If you look carefully in your life, men revolve around the support of the ambitious nature. They've eaten the fruit of pride. Instead of working hard by the work of their hands, they become more and more ambitious and spend their money more foolishly. You have to pay a woman more and more and more money to hold on to her love. See, and what's that love for? It's for pride.
You were saying...
What do you think about this?
I think there's some insights in there. I would disagree that the mother is the devil.
I think he's being funny there.
Yeah,
I don't think he really means that. Yeah, I don't know the guy. I've never met him.
Point.
Yeah, I never knew who he was until right now. I just saw this clip. But he's setting it up. Yeah, he is. But go ahead. I'm listening.
Setting it up.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I'm 47. Genesis 3 is way deeper than I thought it was 20 years ago. Genesis chapter 3, the fall of Adam and Eve, is so profound philosophically, theologically. There's so much there. And I think a lot of what he's talking about there is right, is what you see in the story of the fall of Adam and Eve is, and I believe that's a true story, I believe that's a real story, is the man conforming to the request of the woman. It's original sin. It's a disordered understanding of reality as God established it. And every time you go against the natural order that God established it, not only is it sin, it brings disaster into the world. And, you know, I think that covers a lot of stuff that we've talked about today. And I think we do live in a gynocentric culture. I think feminism is the predominant worldview in relationships and even in the way children are raised. But I've noticed, you know, I would say 6 years ago, if I was on my podcast and I said, feminism is the worst thing ever, people would be like, whoa, even conservatives, Fox News types, Christians will be like, no, there's some good things. The Overton window has shifted on feminism. If you go on X, you go on, there are women that are just like, screw feminism, screw me over. And you see these 20-year-old girls like, I can't believe my mom taught me this. This is not what I want. And there is an active rebellion by men and women against feminism. But I think we need to understand it in the context of, what did God define matrimony as? What did he define man? What did he define woman at? All of that stuff needs to be defined according to Genesis chapter 3. And he's pointing at, look, if you want to understand brokenness in families, you go back to Genesis chapter 3, because everything is getting reversed and overturned in that small little chapter in the Bible. And there's a lot of insight there.
Did you see Candace's conversation with the other girl on feminism? I think
was it Allie Beth Stuckey, maybe?
I don't know what the girl's name is. She's got these, Rob, I'm going to send this. It's so funny you're talking about feminism. I really like the way Candace broke this specific topic down. Rob, I just sent it to you. So she's asking about the CIA funding the feminist movement, where the story comes out. I don't know if you've seen that one or not.
No, I haven't seen that one.
And why that, became popular. And the girl's trying to debate it and argue it. And she makes she says, to be happy. Play this clip, Rob. It's worthy of us watching it. She makes a very good argument here.
Kind of funny, because as someone who's anti-feminism, you practice it more than most women do. I mean, every time you get on your podcast, every time you collect a check, You're practicing feminism.
Okay, that's what you think.
No, that's what it is.
Actually,
because without feminism, you wouldn't be able to exist.
Yeah, people keep saying, I hate when people say that.
But it's just the truth.
It just shows that you haven't done the research to even understand where the feminism
or you don't know history.
From, which was discovered. That's what I'm saying about you, because it means that you don't understand that a bunch of government officials in the CIA funded the feminist movement. So for all of your hatred for the patriarchy,
I'm so confused. So my question is it bad that they funded it or bad that it just happened?
Men wanted women to go into the workforce. The government, which had a lot of men, it was being.
Are you talking about because World War II occurred and we had to go to factories, and then when we left the factories, they forced us back into the home?
That's not what I'm saying at all. So let me tell you what I'm saying, and then you can respond to it.
Go for it.
Gloria Steinem is considered to be a feminist icon, right? Because she led these protests. She also had a bunch of music festivals. She got students involved. It is just a fact that Gloria Steinem was funded by the CIA, okay? The CIA, being the male-dominated CIA of the 50s and the 60s, funded those movements. So what do you think was the explicit aim? Do you think it was because the government really wanted you to be more free, that they wanted to encourage women to enter
Well, I have to be honest with you, I couldn't speak on behalf of the government.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And what their intention
well, I think it's important because you just
that.
said that I don't know history. And I think it's pretty important if you're going to sit across from me and say, I don't know history, that you learn a piece of history and then question. As
you keep bringing up men. And I think it's funny because we should talk about men more. Like you brought up suicide. They're 4 times more likely to kill themselves.
Which is why I don't
And while women, we're twice as more often on antidepressants, but that's because we go out and do what we need to do to keep coping.
Because we're not happy.
And we need to focus on men and the patriarchy because it's actually oppressed them just as much as women now emotionally, right? Because when we're kids, our parents teach us how to cross the street. Look both ways so you can get the other side unharmed. When a boy comes across a feeling, and I'm using men and boys here because they're the ones suffering, women are too, but emotionally. When they come across a feeling they haven't felt before, we have to teach them how to get to the other side and cope with it. Otherwise, they stay where they are. That anger and resentment builds. That's the feeling they become most comfortable with. That's the feeling they go to first in most situations. So we need to stop telling our boys that they don't cry, because they do. They just do it alone, and then they become even more alone.
What do you think about that exchange?
Wow. I mean, Candace nailed it.
Totally.
Yeah. And also people are starting to discover that Karl Marx talks about how that women have to be liberated from the home and women need to be in the workplace. This is Karl Marx. This is socialism. This is part of the new secular religion. And feminism was never intended to make the world a better place. It's creating a different class warfare within the home.
Yeah, but the reality of it is, what are you solving for? What are you solving for? Are you solving for being fulfilled? Are you solving for being independent? Are you solving to be happy? Are you solving to, what are you solving for? Like if the solving is to make you equal to men, you're never going to win, because we're never going to win. We can't have kids. We're never going to be equal to you. We can't have kids. You're never going to be equal to us. There's certain jobs you're just not willing to do. Period. A guy, while this flooding happened in Texas, did you hear about this guy named Scott who went and saved 56?
We should be rewarding this guy.
Seriously.
Yeah.
When you hear the story about what he did and the clips about this guy's he's a rock star. How many women are we expecting to do that? We don't expect women to go. They're not saying some can't do it, but a man, he's putting his life on the line to save other people's lives. That's a man's job. We are assigned to do that. Yeah, I was in the military. We had a lot of females, but what are you solving for? Fulfillment. Are you fulfilled? Is the product solid? Are men as fulfilled as they were before? Is their value being shown? It's not hard to look at the data and see how our men feel today and how our women feel today, especially some of them that signed up to this concept 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. You hear these stories and you're sitting there saying, these guys are not happy on what they're going through.
And look at the results. If the result is 1.6 birth rate, 1.2, 0.8, 0.7, down to 0, that's not a sustainable philosophy. It's not a sustainable way of doing human life. It has to be rejected.
Yeah. No, again, I'm optimistic of where it's going, because I think guys like you are talking about it. We were talking about Joe Rogan earlier. I think the great thing about podcast is we still have an experience. Like, imagine if these Mr. Beast, God gets a hold of them. What does that look like?
Yeah.
Imagine if a Joe Rogan, all of a sudden, he starts You know, when somebody starts speaking a language of, it's a different language, you use certain words in a different way, your approach changes. What is that going to look like? Like, everybody on the left is like, we need to find the Joe Rogan of the left. Dude, if these big podcasts, most of them are conservative, if all of a sudden they start really, guys like you are popping up, Wes Huff and all these other guys, you guys are doing a phenomenal job.
Well, Candace, there.
Well, no, Candace is, but Candace is she's a top 5 podcast. I'm saying all of these others that are coming up, the different roles that they're playing, that's going to be a very interesting thing long term. My level of optimism is very high. Question for you. You're a well-read guy. You like philosophies. What part of Prophet Muhammad wasn't attractive to you to become a Muslim?
I don't know, marrying a little girl. It's kind of at the top of the list for me,
But it has to be at least 9 years old, though.
Yes.
Did you see that clip on the Daily Mail story?
I know.
I saw you reacted to it.
Yeah.
Can you pull up that story?
Marry at 6, but you can't consummate till she's 9 because Muhammad. This is not a real religion. I mean, if I told you, hey, I got this religion and you just get to have sex with virgins for eternity, you want to sign up? I'd be like, I don't know if this is a real religion,
How did it get so big, though?
I know.
How did it get so big?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a mystery.
2 billion people.
Huge.
How did it get so big when they say, this is the story we're referencing, you brought up. Afghan man, 45 years old, marries girl, age 6, before Taliban intervene and say he must wait until she's 9. Go a little bit low, Rob. The haunting photo of an older man and a little girl standing horrified next to the temple. The youngster had allegedly been exchanged by her father for money for a man who already has 2 wives. It was reported by AMU.TV. Go a little bit lower, Rob. And the marriage was allegedly set up to take place on Friday in Helmut province, but the Taliban stepped in to arrest both men involved. No charges were brought against them, but they were forced the creep to wait until the girl is 9 years old for him to take her home. UN Women reported last year that there's been 25% rise in child marriages in Afghanistan after the Taliban banned girls' education in 2021. They also said that there's been a 45% increase in childbearing across the country in the same year as the Taliban came to power after the U.S. heavily exited the night. Watch it go a little bit lower. This is the picture, Rob. That's the 6-year-old kid.
Yep. Disgusting.
I mean,
when they say Muhammad, when he had, I think her name was Aisha, she still had her dolls with her when he married her. How is this a real religion? It's just, we just talked about all these beautiful things about Christ and him coming and suffering and his humility and his passion, all these things. It's a beautiful story. It's very compelling. And then you see Muhammad as a warrior, and then he's, there's even the story if he once tried to commit suicide and he marries this, he's a polygamist and he marries this girl. And I'm just thinking, I don't understand how you would think that this is the true religion, but that's where I'm at. I don't understand why people and Muslims come after me all the time online because I talk about Islam. I'm not ashamed to talk about it. And I just come back to, well, let's look at the founder of your religion. He's either really a prophet or he's not a prophet. He didn't do any miracles. He just seemed to live a bad life. I'm saying not a prophet.
2 billion people.
I know.
How does that happen? How does that happen? You go to a company and you use a product that's bad. Eventually people figure out the product doesn't work. Keeps breaking. You buy a toy, keeps breaking. I'm like, I'm not going to buy this anymore. I'm going to go buy this other company. What has attracted this product to grow the way that it has?
It might be better than the product they had before. That's the only thing that...
What did they have before?
Animism, paganism,
So the alternative, this seemed more peaceful than that. You think it's
peaceful,
that simple?
Maybe just more true than, worshiping an idol or an animistic ancient religion. And also Islam, when it comes to a region, does bring a certain societal stability. I think Muslims in 2025, when we were talking earlier about Christians need to think about politics and culture and society theologically, I think Islam in 2025 does do that much more than the average Christian does. And so I think, when Muslims come to a region, the people might see a certain lift in culture. We may look at that and be like, I don't want that. But maybe if you grew up in Somalia, you're like, that is a benefit. I'll take it. I don't know. What do you think?
Why do I think to 2 billion?
Why do they still have strong sales 1,400 years later?
I think fear is a very powerful tool. I think everybody wants to believe in something. And the moment something catches and has momentum, the amount of people that want to validate the credibility of whatever it is, it decreases. It's just whatever the surface level story is, that's enough for me to get involved instead of me having to fully go deeper. Now, the argument could be Muslims pray more often than others. You know, the amount of times they pray, the level of discipline, how much tougher it is, you know. But then you go look at the Jesuits on how they were, the amount of universities in America that are Jesuits. Well, I mean, the list is massive. And if you go, there's a book I read many years ago called Jesuit Leadership, and how they used to, you were talking about earlier that for Stoicism, 30 days, go drink the worst wine and worst bread. And hey, is it that bad? Is it that bad? Jesuits were famous for doing a lot of that back in the days to kind of get you to be stronger. These are some of the Jesuit schools we have in America.
Yeah.
Boston College, College of the Holy Cross, Creighton, Fairfield, Fordham, Georgia, Gonzaga, Loyola Marymount. I mean, you got a list of them. Marquette. Yeah, you got a lot of them, right? St. Joseph. So, you know, and they're known for their level of discipline. That's the pride of, you know, how disciplined they are. I don't know. I think the targeting and when it was and where it was, the fact that it continues, you know, and it's not like they're converting a lot of people. Their game isn't conversion, it's internal. You know, it's the level of growth with family and how women, they can't say much. You have to be fully to what man says. But systematically, they've grown exponentially.
Their birth rates are good.
It's dropped down a lot. It used to be 4.55.
You know, it's interesting. The Sunni Muslims, which is the bigger Muslim group, not the, well, you know, Shiites, they say that you can practice abortion and contraception up to, I think, the first trimester. So that's kind of a big deal. Christians historically have been opposed to that, certainly abortion at all trimesters, then historically opposed to contraception. So I wonder, as Western medicine hits these regions, how long will it take for contraception and maybe even abortion to drop those numbers? Because remember, a lot of these Muslim nations are still in third world status. We'll see.
We will see. Last question before we wrap up. You know, you're seeing the last 3 years what happened with the rise of Israel, Hamas, the controversy back and forth. Now there's concepts they're using as the woke right. You know, Israel, AIPAC, all of that. Charlie Kirk comments about loyalty Christians have to the church, Israel. No, that's not true. That's nowhere it says that. And it's, where are you at? Because you come from a background of, you know, PhD in philosophy, okay? Then, you know, Episcopal priest, then, Catholic, last, you said 20 years. It's been almost 2005, I think, right?
2006 is
2006, 19 years, yeah. So what is your position with this sensitive topic that some say divided a bit of the Republican Party and got a lot of Democrats to leave the Democratic Party, become independents and Republicans?
Yeah. It's a complicated topic, and I've weighed into it pretty heavily. I follow the historic traditional Catholic teaching, which is Christ came preaching the kingdom of heaven. He came first to his own, the Jewish people, and many of them followed him. Peter, John, Paul, Stephen, these are all early, the Blessed Virgin Mary, St. Joseph. But for the most part, he was rejected. And St. Paul in Romans chapter 9, he says to the Gentiles, the non-Jewish Christians, he says, look, don't brag that you're part of God's people now, God's kingdom. And don't be dismissive towards the Jewish people because they're part of the original vine, you know. And because they were broken off and you were grafted in a way unnaturally, and you're there, you can't just mock and belittle the branches that were broken off. Be humble, have faith. I think that's the right attitude. I don't think Christians should belittle or mock Jewish people that don't believe in Jesus Christ. But I think it is very clear that Christ came preaching the kingdom of heaven, kingdom of God, calling people into the kingdom. And there's one kingdom of God. There's not two or three. There's one. And that I believe that Christians are the chosen people. Those who are faithful to the new covenant of Jesus Christ. We belong to the bride of Christ, the mystical body of Christ, the church. And people will say, well, that's anti-Semitic. But if Jesus is the Messiah and he is the King of the Jews, and he said he was, then that is the final and expressed will of God the Father for the world. And we need to help, our Jewish, I think, family and friends to come in to know and love, serve Jesus Christ. I think that's the way to go. But so the idea that Ted Cruz puts forth and a lot of these dispensationalists and a lot of people in MAGA that like Israel, the Bible says we must give missiles to Israel. We must fund these wars. And
what book is that in the Bible?
Well, they claim Genesis, but if you look it up, God says to Abraham, those who bless you, I will bless, and those who curse you, I will curse. And in Galatians, St. Paul says, those who are in Jesus Christ are the children of Abraham and the heirs of the promises. So the Apostle Paul in the New Testament says, if you believe in Jesus, you are the child of Abraham and the heir of his promises. Mm-hmm. So that tells me that Christians, although we are grafted in, we are part of the people of God. We are, you could call, the new Israel. And so the idea, it's called dispensationalism. It's technically a Christian heresy. It's the idea that God has two peoples. He has plan A for Jews, plan A for B's. There's Israel, there's the church, and God doesn't really mix those together. And it's more and more the role of the church to help financially and militarily support Israel. That's a new doctrine. It was invented by a guy named Darby in the 1800s. It was popularized in the early 1900s by the Scofield Bible. Scofield was not a good man. He left his wife. He was a drunk. He forged checks. He was a bad guy. He may have been funded by shady people. So this whole theology comes from kind of a dark place, and I think it's leading us as Americans, and with policy being banking on this theology, I think it's very dangerous. People need to check it out. They need to figure out where this comes from.
How do you do that? How do you do that? How do you get the two sides? Because it's not pretty,
No,
it's not pretty. And this little division allows the devil to get in, and that's exactly where he likes it. He likes seeing a place like this, right? The division that's taking place, and it's not like it's a friendly debate. There's true animosity on the two opposing sides. How do you unify? How do you get both sides to work together, or just simply unify them? How do you do that?
You can't. I mean, we have to be honest. Sometimes when you're in business, there is not a unifying solution. The claims of Israel in 2025, there is no compromise position with their claim. So that leads us to a division, and I don't know where that goes. But, we've been talking about this two-state problem for decades, and we'll probably be talking about it for decades to come, because I think the Israeli position is they're not going to budge. This is their belief. This is their constitution. This is what they want. So I don't know how you unify with that. What do you think? Is there a way?
I thought you were capable, man. I brought a guy here that's a PhD and all this stuff, and we're going to find a way to solve this issue. That was the outcome of today's podcast. No. You and I together. I guess we got work to do, buddy.
Yeah,
both of us. We got work to do. But really enjoyed meeting you. Pleasure having you on. Truly enjoyed it.
Such an honor to be on PBD. This is a great podcast. Like I said, my wife's a huge fan from day one, and I've been listening. It's kind of surreal being here with you. I did get you a gift. This is a rosary. I know you're not Catholic, but this was blessed by the Pope when I was in Rome.
I love it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And and here's a copy of my book. I signed it for you. Christian Patriot.
You're the man. I appreciate this. The 12 ways to create one nation under God. Christian Patriot. Folks, go place the order. It's coming out September 2nd.
Yep.
Be a pre-order. And by the way,
pre-order.
The forward Harrison Butker, you want to talk about that?
Harrison Butker's,
he's a stud.
Have you ever had him on?
No, I've never had him on. He's a total
dude,
stud.
remember he got in trouble because he gave that speech about women, family, and all that.
Yes.
So he wrote like a banger forward to this book. And Harrison's a friend of mine and just a great father, a great man of God, good Catholic guy. And so he wrote the forward to it, and it's excellent.
How many kids does he have? Tell me he's got like 20
he's
kids.
Got
Can you pull up how many kids he's got? Let's see
this. Maybe pregnant with 4.
How many kids you got, bud? Come on, tell us. Personal life, he's got 3 kids.
3 children.
Maybe you
look right here.
Yeah.
Butker is a devout traditionalist Catholic.
Like you. So he's going to go to 8. He knows.
He's going to pass me.
He's a pretty competitive guy.
Yeah.
Brother, it was great having you on, man.
Thank you.
And hopefully one of these days I'll get a chance. Is it Joy? Am I saying
Joy?
it?
My wife's Joy.
My wife's Jennifer. Hopefully one of these days
Wonderful.
we'll get the wives to meet each other. Take care, everybody. God bless. Bye-bye, bye-bye.
Hey, I'm Dr. Taylor Marshall, and I run a podcast and write books on philosophy, theology, Catholicism. My wife and I have 8 children, so if you'd like to connect and ask me any questions on any of these topics or anything else, please connect with me on Connect.